Hey, it's me, Helena, from helenawoods.com, where I teach you all about astrocartography, relocation astrology, and whatever else I want to talk about. And in today's video, I'm going to be taking you around Paris and talking all about transits, how to predict your own life using transits, the real-time planetary activity in the sky as it corresponds to your birth chart. I'm really excited to be here because I got a free hotel stay because I utilized my points on my credit card. Every year I get a free extra hotel night stay, and it was about to expire next week, and Alex and I are heading out to Australia on Sunday, so I wanted to make sure that I took advantage and got that free hotel stay here in Paris before that expired. And so Alex and I are going to be roaming the streets of Paris, showing you some cool spots, taking you on a little dinner cruise, and of course I'm going to be sharing all the things regarding astrology, predicting your own life using your timing. Before we get started, be sure to get my free astrocartography cheat sheet and private podcast, Mapping Mysteries Revealed, down below in the description. All right, let's get started. All right, step number 1. Let's pull up a bi-wheel. A bi-wheel is when you have one chart on top of another chart. And you can find this going to astro.com or astro-seek.com. These are free websites that you can use to pull up your birth chart and then lay the transits on top. And what I recommend doing is using whole sign houses. This is especially good for being able to read your birth chart and being able to understand relocation charts as well. I have used Placidus for 10 years. When I started learning astrology back in 2011 when I was a senior in high school, I always used Placidus because that was the norm and that's what everyone used. And then in 2020, I started learning about Hellenistic astrology. And I took Chris Brennan's Hellenistic astrology course, which I highly recommend taking if you want to go deeper in learning this. But that's when I started using whole sign houses, and it's a game changer. I have never looked back since, and it is my favorite house system to use when I'm trying to read birth charts. So once you pull up your birth chart using whole sign houses, we're going to add the transits on top as a bi-wheel. Now let's get started with the top things that you're going to want to look at when you look at your transits. Step number 1. Where is the sun transiting through your birth chart? Have you ever noticed people will say, welcome to Taurus season, or it's Aries season, happy Virgo season? Whenever you hear someone say that, it's zodiac sign season, it essentially means where is the sun currently? Where is the sun transiting through? So for instance, right now as I'm recording this, it's Aries season. The sun is currently transiting through Aries. And very soon, in a few days, it's going to be Taurus season. The sun will start transiting through Taurus. And whenever you have the sun transiting through an area of life, in other words, a house is a sector of the chart, like a piece of the pie of your chart, that shows an area of life. For example, second house, the area of money. The 7th house, the area of spouse and relationships. The 11th house, the house of friendships and hopes and dreams. The 10th house of career. We have all these different houses in our charts. And so when the sun, the illuminating luminary that illuminates a part of our lives, when the sun is going through a particular house in our charts, that represents what area of life is being illuminated for that month. I'll give you an example. I am always traveling during Cancer season. Now here's something interesting that I've noticed. I have Cancer in the 9th house of international travel and going overseas. And when the sun is transiting through Cancer, in other words, my 9th whole sign house, I'm always traveling during that part of the year, during Cancer season, July. And particularly going to a far off country like Indonesia or Egypt or somewhere really far away in a different country. That is always happening for me during Cancer season. So look to see where the sun is transiting in your chart, what area of life is being illuminated. Let's go into the next transit, the moon. The moon is the fastest moving luminary. It moves zodiac signs and houses every 2.5 days, meaning for about 2.5 days, the moon, our emotions, our desires, how we're feeling, is going through a different sector of our chart. And depending on what area of life or what house it's going through, you might feel a little bit more upbeat and excited when the moon is going through your 5th house of fun, play, and creativity. You might feel really social when the moon moon is transiting through the 3rd, the 7th, or the 11th houses. These are extremely social houses. The 3rd house of siblings, cousins, talking, communication, local travel, your 7th house of relationships and connections with people, and your 11th house of friends and community. So when the moon is transiting through these areas of life or these houses in your birth chart for those few days every month, you might feel that you're more social or wanting to feel, maybe you're feeling a little bit more extroverted during those times. And maybe you're feeling a bit more inward and reflective when the moon is transiting through the 12th house or the 8th house. The 12th and the 8th houses, I would say, are the most challenging houses in astrology. The 12th house is the house of solitude, hidden enemies, hidden fears, self-sabotage, limiting beliefs, and wanting to go inward and be alone, wanting to get away from it all. When the moon's transiting through your 12th house, these are days that I find I never want to post on social media. I don't want to show up. I don't want to be social. I want to be alone for those 2.5 days. And this corresponds with a lot of people in terms of their emotions. I go way more in depth on all of this in my flagship course, the Relocation Astrology course. Step number 3, you want to locate where the slower moving planets are also going through, like Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn is the planet of responsibility, duty, and obligation, and it can bring a feeling of stagnation, delays, or challenges in your life where you need to grow into, where you need to mature and take on more responsibility in your life. And wherever Saturn is transiting through your birth chart, in what whole sign house it's going through, that is showing you where you're going to have some more challenges or work and effort into your life for about 3 years when Saturn goes through that sign. So for example, right now as I'm recording this, Saturn is in Pisces. Saturn is in the sign of Pisces at the moment. And I have Pisces in the 5th house of self-expression, creativity, and children. When my Saturn return started back in March of 2023, this is when it all began for everyone when Saturn entered Pisces. But for me, it was my Saturn return. And so this is a big time in life that we all experience every 29, 30 years or so when we are being called to step into our life's work. And so look to the whole sign house where you have Saturn going through right now and look back and think about what cycle that has been for you since Saturn entered that sign. So as I'm recording this, Saturn's about to enter Aries coming up in a few months. And so that's going to be going into my 6th house of work, coworkers, and health. So you want to look to see where Saturn is going through because that can show you a little bit more challenges that are coming up in that area of your life. And then you want to look to see where Jupiter is transiting through. Jupiter is the planet of expansion, growth, more of something. Where do you feel called to expand in your life more? Where are you feeling more confidence? Where are you feeling more hope, more faith, more belief in yourself? What area of your life do you feel called to expand into? This can be a really nice transit. So wherever Jupiter, being the greater benefic, is transiting through in your chart via transits, right? It's showing what area of life is getting some cool, good energy and some extra support and help. And so look to the whole sign house that Jupiter is currently transiting in your chart. For instance, I'll give you an example. When Jupiter was transiting through Taurus last year, it was going through my 7th house of relationships. And that was a year where I was meeting so many people in my work. It went over my sun, which this goes a little bit more intermediate techniques. We won't go too deep into that here. But my sun rules my 10th house because my 10th house is in Leo. And so the sun rules over Leo. And so when Jupiter, the planet of expansion and growth, was moving on my sun in the 7th house of one-on-one relationships and partnerships, it had a lot to do with career partnerships and meeting people and my client work growing and the people I was meeting in my work growing, making new friends, making more contacts with people in my field. And so that's just an example. Wherever Jupiter is transiting through, it's bringing a lot more of something. Another example, Jupiter entered Gemini at the end of May of 2024. And when Jupiter started transiting through my 8th house of finances and other people's money, that was around the time when the directory began and the certification program, my Relocation Astrology course. And I've had a lot of increase in finances over the last year. Like I've been able to invest a lot more money, make a lot more money, and it's just felt easier. And also my directory of readers, their businesses have grown grown. They've grown their businesses. They are working with clients. Some of them have even started working part-time or doing full-time astrology. Like even some of the readers on my directory have had to scale back because they're getting so many clients. And so this is just such a cool thing that you can do. And so that's just one example of how Jupiter has supported me financially in the 8th house. It's been a more quieter year than, say, Jupiter in my 7th, because the 8th house is not as in-your-face angular like the 7th house is, but it is a cool time for increase in finances and other people's money, other people's income, etc. So look to see where you have Saturn and Jupiter, those slower moving planets, transiting through in your chart. What whole sign house is Saturn, delays, responsibility, and challenges going through in your chart? And where is Jupiter, expansion, growth, and abundance going through in your chart? Look to the whole sign house, and that will give you some more information on what is happening for you. And the next thing you want to look at when it comes to predicting your life are the nodes, the transiting North Node and South Node, Rahu and Ketu, increase and decrease, exaggeration and apathy. The North Node shows where there's a lot of new beginnings or increase and volume up in your life, where your focus is, and your South Node is what is lessening or decreasing in your life. Now, there are specific times when these nodes will be especially important. And you guessed it, this involves the eclipses. Eclipse season is when the nodes are particularly sensitive and active because it is a full moon or a new moon involving the nodes. So if there's a new moon that month and it's involving the eclipses, it's with the eclipses, then it's a solar eclipse. And if it's a full moon, the sun is opposing the sun and it's involving the eclipses with the North Node and South Node, then it is a lunar eclipse. Now, these are dramatic beginnings and endings in your life, and you want to know where these eclipses, where the nodes are, what part of your chart, what house they are going through, because that is showing where there's a lot of emphasis, exaggeration, and dramatic shifts happening in that area of life. So for instance, I started doing so much client readings, doing astrology work when there were eclipses in my 7th house of one-on-one partnerships and relationships and client work, right? Or recently, the eclipses in my 11th house. Just recently, in March of 2025, for instance, we had a full moon, a lunar eclipse in Virgo. And Virgo, for me, is in my 11th house of friendships and communities. And that was a huge full moon for me where I really let go and stopped caring about a lot of things regarding 11th house. There was just this realization, this reckoning, this moment of awareness of what needs to change in my life in regards to friends, communities, dynamics with groups of people. Do I want to be part of clubs or memberships? Do I want to get involved with the larger astrology community? Do I want to go to these conferences? There was just a lot of things that came up in my life. Also, external things were happening at that same time that really made me realize some things about my focus going forward for this year. So the eclipses are wildcard events. They open doors and they close doors. And so when it's eclipse season, that 2-week period, there's something happening for you in your life. And those things that are beginning or ending for you will have ripple effects over the next 6 months until the next eclipse season. And so you really want to know where transiting North and South Node are in your chart, because that's showing the areas of life that is really being activated for that year for you. And if we're wanting to predict events in our lives, is there going to be a job? Is there going to be something with money? Is there going to be something with, something happening in your life? We really want to look to those eclipse dates and where it's happening, what whole sign house it's happening in your chart, because that's going to give you a lot of information as to when things are happening. So eclipses, they're so important. Note where those North Node and South Node transiting are, because very, very important. And the next thing that you want to note when predicting your own life using transits in astrology is you want to know when the moon is waxing versus waning. When it's a new moon, or the sun and the moon are together, that is a new beginning. It's a quieter period in the month. But then the moon starts separating from the sun. And when this happens, you are increasing in energy. The moon is waxing, building in light and luminosity, building in strength, building in action. When the moon is waning, it's an ideal time to take action on things, to do those things, to start those projects, to launch things, to initiate things, because you're building in energy, you're building in momentum when the moon is waning. Then you hit the full moon phase in the lunar cycle. And this is when the sun and the moon are exactly opposing each other. They're opposite each other. They're directly, in a duel. They're opposite each other, right? And when this is happening, this is peak luminosity, drama, and brightness. It's great for launching things. It's great for being seen. It's great for putting yourself out there. But then, after that full moon phase, the moon starts to wane. And when the moon wanes, we're now decreasing in light, decreasing in energy. We're wrapping up things. And then when the moon is waning, it'll eventually get to this last quarter phase, the third quarter moon phase. And this is where it's a breakdown. It's a looking back. It's a reflection period. It's a more internal period of like, okay, what's not working anymore? What did I learn from this month? What needs to change? How can I do this differently? It's like re-looking at things. Then when the moon continues to wane down into that last waning crescent, it's called the balsamic phase. And this phase is when it's a really quiet time. Rest, self-care, take care of yourself, read, escape into a beautiful book, do some spiritual connection, right? Escape from the world for a little bit. When the moon is in this last phase in its waning cycle, it's a quieter time. Not so much taking action, but reflection, contemplation, quietness, slow living. And so this is why working with your energies, working with the lunar cycle, working with astrology, we can get so much information on not only what we should put our attention to and what's happening in our lives, and we can see when things are ending versus beginning. Very helpful for getting clarity and understanding and that sense of, that's what's going on. That's why this is always happening. This is why I'm feeling this way, right? It gives us so much clarity on things and confirmation. But it's also just so helpful to see how you're feeling is totally in alignment with the transits, totally in alignment with the lunar phases. So start tracking those waxing moons and waning moons, the new moon building up, full moon coming down. Start tracking the moon cycles. And the moon is such a magical key player in all of this. Just going outside and looking up at the moon and connecting with it and sending a little prayer to the moon or having a conversation with the moon or just looking at it at the end of a day. It is such a beautiful way to connect with astrology, the cosmos, and life in a greater way. I've been connecting with the moon for so much of my life, and it wasn't until way later when I reached, adulthood that I started learning about the astrology and with the lunar cycles. Back in 2016, I started getting really into the lunar phases. 2017, I remember I was reading every book I could on it. And for years in the early 2020s, I had this moon journal by Yasmin Boland, Moonology Journal, and I used to fill it out every year. I had it for like 3 or 4 years, and it was so helpful for me understanding more about my energy, my cycles, and what I'm going through. So that is just a little introduction to predicting your own life, noticing your own energies, and what's happening in your life based on the transits in astrology. Such a fascinating topic, looking at the transits on your chart. So let me know down below if you like this kind of content, if you want to see more videos from me, and also let me know what topics you would like me to make a video on. Are there any astrology topics you'd like me to go deeper on, to explore, to refresh for you? Anything with astrocartography you would like to learn? I'm all ears. I love supporting you. And be sure to check out my course, Trust Your Timeline, if you want to go a little bit deeper on learning more advanced timing techniques like zodiacal releasing, annual perfections, secondary progressions, and going a little bit deeper on transits with examples, tutorials, and class call replays so you can see exactly how this works. And also don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Ms. Helena Woods for daily updates and astrology inspiration. I'll put the link down below in the description as well. Have a magical day and happy astro travels.